Good morning again from Hunt City. We're glad you're watching. Hope maybe you get a few things from sharing these scriptures that will touch you, maybe make you think and challenge you a little bit. This past week in our community, there was a farm accident where a grain truck was coming down the road. A semi was entering that road from a lane and didn't see the other truck coming, and they collided, causing the first truck, the grain truck, to roll over. A young boy who was riding in the truck was thrown out of the truck. There was a lot of damage, but the three people involved in the accident were relatively unhurt. The boy who was thrown from the truck was miraculously, just minor injuries, just a few scrapes and bruises and bumps, and, praise God for that. And the question is, did God intervene? Did he intervene in that? It was human error that caused the accident. But my question is also, another question is, if this boy had been injured seriously, does that mean that God loved him less? Well, the answer is no, it doesn't. We're always looking for a cause. We're always looking to put blame on something or somebody. Whose fault is it? And we're going to read a story about that in the book of John. Another time there was a story where Jesus was talking about these guys who had been building a temple or building a building in Jerusalem, and the building collapsed and it killed several of them. And Jesus, in one of his messages he was giving, said, well, were these people worse sinners than other people because this happened? Well, no, bad things happen. But here's a story we're going to read in John chapter 9. John chapter 9. Now, as Jesus passed by, he saw a man who was blind from birth, and his disciples asked him, saying, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Jesus answered, neither this man nor his parents sinned, but that the works of God should be revealed in him. I must work the works of him who sent me while it is day. The night is coming when no one can work. As long as I'm in the world, I'm the light of the world. When he'd said these things, he spat on the ground and made clay with the saliva, and he anointed the eyes of the blind man with the clay. And he said to him, go wash in the pool of Siloam, which is translated sent. So he went and washed and came back seeing. Therefore the neighbors and those who previously had seen that he was blind said, is this not he who sat and begged? Some said, this is he. Others said, it looks like him. He said, I am he. Therefore they said to him, how were your eyes open? He answered and said, a man called Jesus just made clay and anointed my eyes and said to me, go to the pool of Siloam and wash. So I went, I washed, and I received my sight. Then they said to him, where is he? He said, I do not know. Then the Pharisees approached the man. The Pharisees came. They brought him who formerly was blind to the Pharisees. Now it was a Sabbath when Jesus made the clay and opened his eyes. Then the Pharisees also asked him again how he had received his sight. He said to them, he put clay on my eyes, and I washed, and I see. Therefore some of the Pharisees said, this man is not from God, because he does not keep the Sabbath, talking about Jesus. Others said, how can a man who is a sinner do such signs? And there was a division among them. Excuse me. They said to the blind man again, what do you say about him? Because he opened your eyes. He said, he is a prophet. But the Jews did not believe concerning him that he had been blind and received his sight, until they called his parents of him who had received his sight. And they asked them, saying, is this your son, who you say was born blind? How then does he see? His parents answered and said, we know that this is our son, and he was born blind, but by what means he now sees, we don't know. Or who opened his eyes, we don't know. He is of age, ask him. He will speak for himself. His parents said these things because they feared the Jews, for the Jews had agreed already that if anyone confessed that he was Christ, he would be put out of the synagogue. Therefore his parents said, he is of age, ask him. So they again called the man who was blind and said to him, give God the glory. We know this man is a sinner. He answered and said, whether he's a sinner or not, I do not know. One thing I know, that though I was blind, now I see. Then they said to him again, "What did he do to you? How did he open your eyes?" He answered them, "I told you already. You did not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you also want to become his disciples?" A little bit of humor here, a little bit of sarcasm from the man. Then they reviled him and said, "You are his disciple, but we are Moses' disciples. We know that God spoke to Moses. As for this fellow, we do not know where he's from." The man answered and said to him, "Why, this is a marvelous thing, that you do not know where he is from, yet he opened my eyes. Now we know that God does not hear sinners, but if anyone is a worshiper of God and does his will, he hears him. Since the world began, it has been unheard of that anyone opened the eyes of someone who was born blind. If this man were not from God, he could do nothing." They answered and said to him, "You were completely born in sins, and are you teaching us?" And they cast him out. Jesus heard that they'd cast the man out, and he went and found him, and he said to him, "Do you believe in the Son of God?" He answered and said, "Who is he, Lord, that I may believe in him?" Jesus said to him, "You have both seen him, and it is he who is talking with you." Then he said, "Lord, I believe," and he worshiped him. And Jesus said, "For judgment I have come into this world, that those who do not see may see, and those who see may be made blind." Then some of the Pharisees who were with him heard these words and said to him, "Are we blind also?" Jesus said to them, "If you were blind, you would have no sin, but now you say we see. Therefore your sin remains." In other words, Jesus says, you see with your eyes, but your hearts are blind. We might title this message or this passage, "Adventures in Missing the Point." The Pharisees totally missed the point of everything in this story. Did God love this man less because he was born blind? No. And the disciples, once again, they saw the blind man. We always want to put blame on somebody. Whose fault is it? The disciples say to Jesus, "Who sinned that this man's born blind? Was it him or his parents?" Well, how could it have been the man? How could he have sinned before he was born? He was born blind. He couldn't have sinned before he was born. Jesus said, neither him nor his parents sinned. And that's a little ironic because we know that everyone is a sinner. It says that in Romans, all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. But what Jesus is saying here is this situation didn't happen because this man or his parents sinned. This happened because there's sin in the world. It's a broken world that we live in. So Jesus goes up to the man and he said, "It's not because anyone sinned, but it's so you can see the amazing works of God." Okay, so Jesus does this real sanitary thing. He spits in the dirt, he makes a little wad of clay, puts it on the man's eyes, and he says, "Go to the pool of Siloam and wash." So the man does. Jesus said, "Go and wash." The man obeyed. Okay, did he have any idea he would be healed? Did he hope? Did he even know what this was about? I don't know, but he obeyed. He went and he washed and he was healed. He could see. People took note of this. They said, "Isn't this the guy that used to sit out here on the corner and beg for money because he can't work?" The man said, "I am the man." And they wanted to hear his story. "How were your eyes healed?" And he recounted the story to the people, how Jesus made the clay and put it on his eyes. And he told me to go and wash, so I did, and I could see. Then the Pharisees, the religious elite, got involved. They wanted to hear the story, so he told them too. He repeated the story again. His story is the same every time. And the Pharisees said, this man, Jesus, he's not of God, because if he were a man of God, he would not do this on the Sabbath day. He would wait to heal you until another day. Someone who is, and the man said, "But how could someone who is not of God do something like this?" I'm sorry, some of the other Pharisees disagreed. They said, "How could someone who's not of God do something like this?" So they asked the man who was healed, "What do you say about this guy, Jesus?" He said, "He's a prophet." And the healed man knew there was something about Jesus, even though he'd never seen him. He had heard his voice. Jesus touched him, and he had not seen Jesus yet, remember, because his encounter with Jesus was when he was blind. And then the Pharisees called in the man's parents. They said, "Is this your son? Are you saying that this is your son, that he was born blind, and now he can see? How did this happen?" And mom and dad are scared because they've heard anybody say that, or they've heard people say that anybody who gives Jesus credit for anything is going to be kicked out of the synagogue. You can't come here and worship if you listen to this Jesus guy. And so his parents are scared. They said, well, you talk to our son. This is our son. He was born blind, but we don't know how he was healed. You talk to him. He's of age. He can speak for himself. They're scared. They don't want to be kicked out of the church, out of the synagogue. So the Pharisees go back to their son who has been healed and says, give God the glory. This man, Jesus, is a sinner. And then the man says one of the greatest things in the Bible. He says, I don't know whether he's a sinner or not. I just know that I was blind and now I can see. Isn't it ironic that the Pharisees, who were the religious leaders, the educated, the intelligent people, said this Jesus is a sinner? If they only knew, if they only realized he was the Son of God, the only person who never sinned, how ironic it is they say this man is a sinner. And then there's a little bit of humor here, a little bit of sarcasm when the Pharisees say to the man, tell us again how this happened. And the guy says, why? Do you want to be his disciples too? Now there's an implication there that this guy is believing Jesus and trusting Jesus. It's like he's calling himself a disciple because he says to the Pharisees, do you want to be his disciple too, like I am? So it's interesting. It's just interesting that he's calling himself a disciple of Jesus. And the healed man demonstrates that he's more in tune with God's will than the religious leaders of the day. He says, this is a marvelous thing. You don't know where he's from, yet he healed me. He caused my eyes to open. He made my blindness go away. He says, paraphrased here, if this man were not of God, he couldn't do this. So he's kicked out, excommunicated, removed from the church. Jesus heard about this, that they kicked him out. He sought the man out. He found him. And he said, do you believe in the Son of God? And he said, who is he that I might believe in him? And Jesus said, you've seen him, and it's the one who's talking to you now. And the man said, and this is a great prayer, I believe, for us to pray. The man said, I believe, and he worshiped Jesus. That's a great prayer, I believe. And he gave praise and worship to Jesus. Do we ever miss the point? Something happens, some life event. We spend so much time looking for meaning, looking for the cause, asking why, wanting an explanation, and we don't see the marvelous work that God is doing. So many times we're like the Pharisees. We miss the point. Do we miss the point of the gospel? The good news. We showed a video to the kids at church the other night. It's a little 3-minute video explaining the gospel. It says the gospel is the good news of Jesus, and it's this. The gospel is Jesus plus nothing. Jesus is the good news. Jesus is the gospel. Jesus died for our sins. He was buried. He rose from the dead. He was seen by hundreds of people before he ascended into heaven. Do you believe that? Do you believe that? Spiritual blindness is 1,000,000 times worse than physical blindness. The Pharisees had all this knowledge of God, of the law, of the rituals, but they were totally blind in their hearts when it came to God. We sang a song at church called Open the Eyes of My Heart, Lord, I Want to See You. And it's a great song. It goes along with this passage. Because so many times we see with our physical eyes, but our spiritual eyes are blind. How many times do we miss what God is doing in our lives and around us because we have the spiritual blinders on? A great prayer for us today is, God, remove the blinders from my eyes, remove the blinders from my heart, so I recognize when you're at work in my life, so I can give you the praise. John chapter 9, read that story again and just enjoy it. Enjoy the truths that are in it. Thanks for watching today. Have a great week. See you next time.